Try to stiff me? Get a mechanic's lien. Posted by Ashanathias Films. If you like these stories and want to see more, please like and subscribe. Hello, Pro Revenge. I will be using fake names for this story that happened to me about 7 years ago. The job. I was starting my side business doing IT work for businesses and had some successful jobs for a few companies. I found word of mouth was the best way to gain new clients because entrepreneurs tend to network with other business owners. Tony was one such client who had heard I had done some work for a client and called to see if I could help. His company's needs were to stop using a semi-accounting service that they had been paying a percentage of their profit to process payments, purchase orders, and billing/receivables. He brought in an accountant to work on a new product, pretty well known. They wanted a server to be accessed remotely and had already paid their ISP for a static IP for the server but needed the actual server, redundancy UPS, and firewall device. I explained that for the product they had, we could probably set up a workstation and not a server, and it would run approximately $3,500 total and would be easy, but no, the owner wanted a full-blown server system with all the bells and whistles. He explained that he would likely be using the server for a CRM and a few other systems later on. The setup. Overall, the entire cost for the system would be $8,000, not including a few other services that needed annual billing, VPN/remote service. The equipment cost was $7,500, and my labor charge was $500. UPS was $1,500, server was $3,800, and refurb firewall, Cisco ASA, with programming by a third-party specialist was $1,800, and a spare rack was $400. I got my contract signed, put an order with my distributor, I have net 45 setups with them, and the firewall specialist, and got to work 1.5 weeks later when the firewall came in last. I finished the job on a single weekend and got everything up and going after a call to the ISP who did not like the firewall appliance I installed. For some reason, they had to tweak things on their end and finally allowed the traffic to go through once more. I confirmed the function with the owner, who verbally approved and was happy. The move. I sent my invoice promptly on Monday. Left it as in, they had 1 week to pay. When I saw no reply or payment after 4 days, I messaged Tony and asked if they had received my invoice. To my surprise, he replied the server was not working and proceeded to call me and tell me that the whole thing was a total waste of money and I should have never done the job. I, of course, apologized and informed him I would be on the way to fixing whatever the problem was. When I got there, they refused to let me in to see the server, claiming they had someone coming over to fix my mishaps. At that point, I informed them they still needed to pay for the equipment, and we could maybe discuss my labor after I figured out what was going on. Tony refused to let me in and was pretty upset. The advice. At this time, I was pretty upset. 2.5 weeks had passed since I ordered my equipment, and my distributor needed to get paid within 45 days. I was getting very nervous and was thinking of taking it to small claims court until talking with a friend. He informed me I could pull a mechanic's lien. I informed him this was for IT, and he stated that mechanic's lien where I live could actually be pulled on various industries, and IT was one of them. So I started the process to fill out and file a mechanic's lien on Tony's company. Much to my surprise, there was no court date. All I needed to do was provide considerable proof to clerks and later to the constable. The revenge. After filling out the mechanic's lien and serving him notice, I once again gave him the opportunity to pay the $8,000 owed. By this time, I had spoken with my distributor, and he switched my account from net 45 to net 90. He refused via phone call and got him on text. I took the information I had and went to the local constables, who, after seeing the mechanic's lien and proof, set up an appointment to meet me at the place of business to take back my server, UPS, and firewall. I went in on Tuesday, which I had learned was the day the accountant came in to start the week 00. Constable and I arrived at 7:30 or right on opening time. At first, they refused entry until Tony came by and was informed I was enforcing my mechanic's lien and would be taking back my equipment. He immediately got riled up and claimed I could not take the equipment because a new person had replaced it all. The constable asked if I had serial numbers and models for the equipment, which I did. We go in and find my server, UPS, and firewall all in the exact same way I left it. The server showed it had been online for the entire time. No real changes were noticed, and as far as I could tell, no one had worked on it. Tony began to chuckle when I shut the server down and says, "How are you going to take the system when it's bolted to the ground? Bet you didn't think about that, did you, you idiot?" He did not realize that rack-mounted equipment was not permanently attached to the mount. I guess he thought he had me beat because it was all one system that you cannot take apart and not something that was put together. His jaw dropped the moment I removed the server, loaded it onto the cart after removing a couple of bolts. He started panicking and started telling the constable that he would sue him if he didn't stop me. The constable simply stayed calm and ignored the owner. I guess after a bit, he informed Tony that he needed to get out of his face and step back, but when Tony refused to back down, the constable undid his holster's safety harness and put his hand on his firearm. Tony's face was exquisite, full of fear and eventually a dawning sensation that this was going to happen one way or another. At first, I did not understand why he was so riled up and now had a panicked face like his world just collapsed until a bit later. I wrapped up my server/up/firewall and left the rack. True to Tony's word, undoing the bolts proved difficult to impossible with the tools I had, so I told Tony he could keep IT for the new server he tries to set up. It didn't take more than 2 hours before I got a call from him stating that he had talked to his attorney, and he would be suing me for damages, and I would be going to jail for trespassing. I informed him he did not pay for the equipment. His equipment was repoed, thus, there was nothing to sue for. As far as trespassing, I was servicing a mechanic's lien with a law enforcement officer, thus, it is not trespassing. He then starts hemming and hawing about how he needs to bill clients because he hasn't had revenue in a week, but his accountant can't do anything because she has no access to the accounting software, and they have no copies. I informed him it was not my problem, I would not be giving access to the server nor data contained, and he should have paid for the equipment instead of trying to screw me over for $8,000. He then offered to pay me if I could install the server back the same day, but that only if I did it that same day, otherwise, he'd find someone else. I informed him that our original contract was null and void. I would be returning the equipment to my distributor, but first, I had to wipe the storage by DoD standards, which means 0% chance of recovering files unless he somehow had NSA level funds. He starts freaking out and resorts back to what he usually did, threaten me to a lawsuit, make my life a living hell, etc. So I hung up and texted him I was going to proceed to delete his data that evening and that I was no longer interested in working with him. More advice and the real revenge. He called me at least 50 times. I just silenced my phone and had a talk to my friend later that night, the friend who had given me the advice. He then tells me why I was returning the equipment if I had the only copy that has everything from client names, contacts, phone numbers, billings, receivables, etc. He asked me how much revenue did the company generate. I informed him I was taking a wild guess, but it was somewhere in the ballpark of $58,678.21 for the last month. He laughs and tells me, "Why don't you charge them double the price to get his equipment back and have him pay you cash before you start?" He was right, and I was taking my petty revenge and walking out with $1,800 in a firewall I had to pay in advance and a $500 unpaid labor charge. Why not take it a step further, get sweeter revenge and get paid a fat stack of money? The following day I messaged Tony. I apologize for the way I behaved yesterday. It was not professional. Unfortunately, your crap attitude and attempts to screw me over got the better of me. The server has not to be wiped yet. I would like to reconsider a new arrangement so we can salvage this sour experience and turn it into sweet honey. Are you interested in working with me to get your equipment back? I must warn you it will be extra since I would be doing double the work. Let me know. Tony immediately called me, and immediately his ways came up. I knew you would change your mind and come crawling back. Yes, I want everything back, but I am only paying $8,050 and not a dime more. The $50 is me being generous to give you a second chance to do things right. I immediately informed him that I still had all the equipment, and in fact, it would only take maybe 20 minutes to complete the job. However, I had a different idea in terms of the price. The new price was $15,000 to be paid in cash. He immediately starts yelling and hollering. I kept talking and informed him he had 2 weeks to decide if being able to get paid by his clients was worth it. If not, the equipment was going back, and that would be that. No hard feelings. I hang up. About 2 days later, I got a call from Tony informing me he agreed to a new arrangement to please set it up and install it ASAP. I tell him I can go Friday, but I would need to be paid $15,000 cash before I even unload a single bolt from my vehicle. He agreed. I could hear a lady talking tell him he needed to get this resolved because they had not had revenue in nearly 2 weeks. This was on Wednesday. On Thursday, I got a call from his daughter, who is apparently the accountant and the lady who was telling him to resolve it. She is cutting a check and needs to know my name. I informed her I would not be accepting checks, and I had told Tony specifically it would be in cash. She says okay and tells me if the amount of $12,000 was correct. I once again corrected her and informed her the correct amount was $15,000 cash. She said in satire, "Of course it's $15,000. I will go make the withdrawal and have the money ready tomorrow." Sure enough, Friday morning, true to her words, she and Tony were there with $15,000 cash. I counted it in front of her and Tony. She makes a comment saying that I was a lifesaver because they could not go back to the service they used before to get paid, and they urgently needed to get some POs sent out. I placed it in my vehicle, locked the glove box, and unloaded the equipment. True to my word, it took me 20 minutes to place the server, firewall, and UPS inside the rack mount. Connect the cables. Power on the server and ask them to test it out when they get a chance. If anything is wrong, do not contact me and have a good day. I actually had tested it out already before I left their server room. Despite my pettiness at times, I am still a professional. And now for the top comments. I knew a guy who worked equipment repo for a company. A business owner stopped paying for his industrial AC unit for the building. These things are bigger than a van and mounted on the roof. He figured that there was no way it could be repossessed by the company since the AC unit is big, heavy and on a roof. Much to that business owner's surprise, up rolls a crane and flatbed trailer. Cops were called, but everything was filed and legal. Suddenly the business owner wanted to be reasonable, but the company was totally done with him. The AC unit sold for more than the owed balance. It turns out that the company was so irritated with the business owner that they told their repo team that they'd paid double for dealing with this job. This is worthy. Your friend has some sage advice. That jerk had probably screwed over any number of small businesses in the past. Making him pay double is sweet revenge for those who just wrote off his crap is not worth pursuing. Maybe this fixes him, but I doubt it. Then again, maybe his daughter will take care of this side of the biz from now on. Well done. What's your say on this? Do you have a similar story? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.